Hey everyone, Jay Whitner here with Space Headlines. We do a quick recap every week of what's going on in space, and today we'll be talking about the second week of September 2019. Our first item is the Open Lunar Foundation. This is a fairly new nonprofit that wants to build a base on the moon. Now, there are plenty of nonprofits focused on space exploration and development. This one does seem to be a little bit different. For one, they've already raised $5 million. And another aspect that's interesting is they have a lot of big space names in their leadership, and a couple of billionaires are involved in this operation. So this seems like it may have traction. They want to open up a small lunar facility on our moon, and they think that they can do this project for $2 or $3 billion. So this is very exciting, obviously. We'll see how things turn out. And this is great timing. The United States is more focused on the moon recently. Europe and other nations are focused on the moon. A lot of the nonprofits in space are focused on the moon. And here seems to be a nonprofit with a lot of financial resources behind it. SpaceX, they, in keeping with their strategy, their long-term philosophy, they tend to do testing on other vehicles. So the most recent example of this is on the last flight of the Starhopper, they flew some of the ceramic heat tiles that they plan to use on the Starship as a test. So they're using one vehicle to do testing for the next vehicle. They put several of these ceramic tiles on the Starhopper in different positions on the vehicle. And if you see, there's an arrow depicted on the image here pointing to one of the ceramic tiles that's about 15 feet away from the Raptor engine. So in my way of thinking, that is maybe the most extreme test position of the tiles they put on for this mission, in that there's heat and wind and acoustic activity going on down there with the Raptor engine operating. So I have not yet heard any results on what they found from the testing of the ceramic heat tiles on Starhopper, but it is neat and thrifty and in keeping with the SpaceX philosophy that they've shown in the past. SpaceX has also filed paperwork for the testing of their orbital Starship prototype. And this is a little bit complicated, so I'll try to recap briefly. The Starhopper was the first of their sort of Starship prototypes. It was for very low altitude testing, had one engine. The orbital Starship prototypes, they're building two of them right now. Those, as I understand it, are going to have 3 engines, and they're going to be capable of much higher altitude. So they did some paperwork with the FCC about these orbital Starship prototypes. And it was very exciting looking at the paperwork. They're planning about 25 different tests on these orbital prototypes. And the tests would culminate in 3 what they're calling large hops, where these vessels could achieve altitudes of up to 62 miles before returning to the Earth. So this is going to be a whole different situation than the Starhopper flights, and very exciting to watch. And I understand that the prototypes are coming along very well, and that the orbital prototype in Texas is getting ready to have a milestone in terms of their construction of the ship. And all this is leading up to Elon Musk's presentation for my birthday on September 28th. NASA released an exciting video showing just the unbelievably large size of the Space Launch System. It's hard, I think, for people to internalize how big this thing is. If you've been to New York, the Space Launch System is taller than many of the office buildings in New York, but perhaps the easiest visualization is the Statue of Liberty. It's taller than the Statue of Liberty, and it's going to fly into space. So this is definitely a Saturn V class vehicle. The video was very compelling, showed different pieces of the Space Launch System. And one of the things that really struck me in watching it was the hydrogen tank. And really, the people walking around near the hydrogen tank looked like ants. It was just amazing, the scale of the operation of the SLS. Bigelow Aerospace has spent quite some time on developing their expandable modules. They launched quite some years ago some test modules of the expandable technology. And since then, they really have focused on the B330 module. The 330 stands for 330 cubic meters, is the interior volume when the item is expanded. And to put this in a little bit of perspective, the interior volume of one of these things is about 1/3 of the interior pressurized volume of the space station. So these things are very, very large. And there's a lot of uses for them. They could be attached to the space station to augment it. They could be a free-flying space station on their own, or they could be used as initial bases on the moon or Mars, perhaps. So Bigelow Aerospace unveiled it and showed some features to the press recently, and hopefully they will be taking the next step soon. The space elevator is an old science fiction concept, building an elevator from the surface of the Earth to go up into space. And the problem historically with the space elevator from Earth to space is we didn't have a strong enough material with the appropriate tensile strength to do such a thing. But a lunar elevator is much easier to build. It can be built with commercially available materials. And the news that was recently released is people did a fresh study on the lunar elevator idea. And they're saying they think you could build something like that for about $1 billion. Now, obviously, $1 billion is quite expensive, but we are seeing more and more interest in the moon. And the idea is this thing would pay for itself by taking roughly the first 50 payloads up to the moon's surface. From then on, it would just make profit. So this seems to be economically viable. And we'll have to see if anybody actually wants to step up and build it. The insurance industry over the last 20 years has had a fairly steady reduction in their insurance rates. You know, they've seen higher and higher rocket liability, and they've lowered their premiums commensurately with that. But in the last couple of years, there's been some losses because there's been some big missions have failed. One example is a Vega rocket failed, and the lost paycheck they had to write was $400 million. So it can be pretty exciting to be an insurance company sometimes. But the bottom line is in 2018 and 2019, the insurance companies showed some losses. So they're thinking that they want to increase the rates a little bit to where they are roughly 10% of the value. And what you would get for that 10% insurance premium is you'd be covered for the launch in the first year of operation. That's it for Space Headlines, covering the second week of September. Hope you enjoyed our show. And we'll see you in a week with the third week of September. Take care.